Hello, Rachel. Thank you so much for being here. I think today's episode is going to be really powerful.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I just want to jump right in. And first, let's help people understand who are you? How did you come to be the pelvic pain coach?
Sure. So, my name is Rachel Gofman. I am a doctor of physical therapy and pelvic pain coach, and I help women heal their chronic pelvic pain through a holistic mind body approach while returning to living full and empowered lives while they heal. So, I always say that this path chose me for better or for worse,
As it does many of us.
as it does so many of us. So I wish it happened any other way. Yes, of course, but it couldn't have. So I myself had, well, a whole lot of mind body disorder conditions, but pelvic pain really uprooted my entire life and kind of forced me to actually do the work that mind body healing required. Finally, after, decades. And so I deeply believe that this is the work that's so needed in the world. And so many folks are missing when they're getting spun around, what I call the medical merry-go-round, right, in the system, being given temporary fixes to very real debilitating physical symptoms, but aren't really getting at the root cause, which for so many of us is feeling chronically unsafe in our nervous systems. And so the work I do is to help people really unravel that and really find authentic safety in their nervous systems and ultimately heal their symptoms.
So then, okay, there's a few questions I want to ask around that. What, first and foremost, so people understand what we mean by pelvic pain, which it might sound obvious, but what are some common, if there are common explanations? I'm going to say explanations like in quotes or diagnoses in quotes that people might receive.
Yeah, I love the word labels. Like I say labels, right? Because diagnoses are just labels. So my diagnoses, I'll say it were those, were unprovoked vulvodynia, pudendal neuralgia, interstitial cystitis. Those are mine. Other people could also have vaginismus. They could have pelvic floor dysfunction, hypertonic pelvic floor, coccydynia, SIJ dysfunction, chronic pelvic pain as a broad term, adenomyosis, endometriosis. Those are a little bit different because there is a structural component. However, there's a lot of discussion around how that pain actually is constructed, which we don't have to get too deep into, but just FYI, that could also be helped with mind body work. What else? Oh, levator ani syndrome. So many. There's so many.
Yeah. Yes. The labels, so many. And I know that it's really important to note because people will hang on to them, right?
Yes.
So much to where they're like, well, no, but I have this.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I did, right? And because they sound really real, right? And to be clear, they are real in that they are labeling a description of sensations in a specific part of the body lasting for 3 to 6 months, right? But what so many of us, when we're patients, right, do not understand is most of these diagnoses are diagnoses of exclusion, meaning they just do that. They label it from the location and duration, and there is no ultimate test that's saying you have this structural problem that is the underlying mechanism. It's saying you have these sensations, we don't know why it's lasted this long, here's your label. But what happens to so many, I'm gonna say of us, because I was in that boat too, right, is we get this label, we're told it is incurable, and that becomes kind of a death sentence. It becomes this belief that takes so much to unwind. And I think that is something that so many of us have to deal with when working through unraveling these symptoms.
How did you come to the mind body work in your journey?
Which time?
Yeah.
So I'll start with my original quickly and then we'll get into pelvic pain. So I first got into mind body work / discovered mind body work for myself with chronic low back pain with sciatica, which happened in college. I had a traumatic incident that I did not connect with the very sequential onset of chronic back pain with sciatica. I went through a whole 2.5 years of PT and injections with no relief. My father, who is the least woo person in the world, was listening to the Howard Stern show and said, "Hey, there's a book called Healing Back Pain. Why don't you check it out?" And I was like, "Sure, I'll read a book." I read this book in one night and bawled my eyes out because I was like, "Oh, can I swear on your podcast?" I was like, "Oh shit." Because basically what I'd come to understand from reading this book was what happened to me emotionally happened to me physically. And actually have to deal with that in order to heal this debilitating pain. And so that was a little bit of a book cure, honestly. Like, I read the book. I was like, my body is safe. I kind of did the work of like getting back to exercise and movement and being less fearful of my body. And like within 6 months, I was kind of good. So that was like step one, my body healing for me. Then I had what I call a year and a half off, but like I had chronic migraines and like palpitations and other symptoms that just I didn't name as being like chronic in the way that my back pain was. So I was like, oh, this is fine. I'm totally fine. And then I had a re-traumatizing incident that happened about a year and a half, between my back pain and the onset of pelvic pain. And within a week, I developed what I thought was an infection. I thought maybe it was like BV or yeast or maybe an STI, and I was really panicking about that. And so I went to the doctor, I got checked out. All the tests came back negative. And I was like, well, that's impossible. I feel terrible. Test me again. I get tested again. Everything's negative. And she's like, okay, well, try this medication. Maybe it's BV. Subclinical. Oh, that was a good one. Subclinical BV. Take antibiotics. Didn't help. Then she gives me yeast medication. Long story short, I go round and around and around, getting testing and testing and testing, getting thrown these random medications with no actual evidence of infection. And symptoms are just getting worse and worse and worse. And so I'm like, okay, I see like maybe 10 more doctors who all do basically the same thing. Plus I get a transvaginal ultrasound, I get a pelvic MRI, I get a brain MRI because I think I have MS. Symptoms at this point are spreading. I have not only vulvar burning, I have clitoral pain. I now have like burning with urination. I have UTI-like symptoms. Like things are just expanding and I'm like, I'm dying. This is it. I'm dying. This is the end. And so basically once I left the neurologist's appointment and I had my scans done and they're like, nothing is wrong with you, basically. Like you have these diagnoses. I was given over this, the course of a year of getting assessed. I was given those 3 diagnoses because I couldn't freaking figure out what was going on with me. But I was only being offered like temporary, expensive, and invasive treatments. I was being offered injections. I was being offered nerve blocks. I was being offered antidepressants and suppositories and all of these things where I'm like, if you told me this could heal me, I might be down. But all you're telling me is like, this may help temporarily, but like probably not for that long. And I was like, I don't want to do this. You can't explain to me what's happening or why. So I basically I was forced to kind of exit the system. So I'm like, there's nothing more here for me. And I refused to do like what I just talked about in an email was a temporary treatment trap, right? Of like getting stuck in the cycle of temporary relief over and over and over. And like, I was like, I don't even believe this was happening with me. So I don't want to do this. So I was devastated. I was like, what do you do now? And I honestly never exactly remember how I got back to the mind body approach, but somehow, some way, I stumbled on someone's story online that was talking about healing pelvic pain. I think it was IC through a mind body approach. And I was like, okay, this is possible. This is possible. And then I found Nicole Sachs' work and I was like, okay, I love how she talks about this. I'm building belief, but I'm not quite ready to like go all in. And then I heard Dr. Howard Schubner talk about pelvic pain being a really common place that mind-body syndromes and symptoms show up. And my medicalized brain really had to hear it from a physician. I just was not ready to hear it from anybody who was not like a medically trained person. And so once I heard that from him, I was like, okay, I'm like choosing to do this, but like, what do I do? Right? Because I was so scared. And what was also different about pelvic pain versus back pain, like yes, with back pain, I did have structural stuff. Like on my MRI, I had a hernia disc at L5S1. I had bulging discs, but I had read so much about how those were normal abnormalities. I was like so much more willing to accept that as a normal abnormality. But when it came to pelvic pain, I had like very real redness. Like my vulva was red. I had in my urine culture, I would have like positivity for like blood and some like nitrates, but no bacteria on culture. But I was like, something is wrong. Something is wrong, right? So and my muscles were obviously really tight. And I was like, okay, I have pelvic floor dysfunction, right? So I had all of these like physical signs that I had a really hard time believing were like quote unquote mind body syndrome, neuroplastic TMS. And so it took me a lot more work to believe that my body was actually safe and okay, and this work was sufficient to eliminate my symptoms.
Yeah. I'm really, really happy that you noted that, like, especially the journey, because that is so much more common than we realize. That is very similar to my journey, different types of symptoms, but like so many different ways of coming to this work and being stuck in symptoms for years after actually healing some, not realizing that's my body, right? It's so common because it highlights the true impact, or what am I trying to say? The hold that our brain has on thinking a certain way about health, which how could we not, right? Like, it's everywhere. That's what we've learned growing up. It's the Western medical model in the culture. Of course.
Of course, like so much compassion for my past self and
Yeah.
all the clients I hear from who are freaking out
Yeah.
because of course, right? We've never learned anything different, and we've been trained to trust medical professionals and that they have all the answers. And so when they don't, we are terrified because we don't
Yeah.
even know that we could look for other answers, right? Like it feels so like counter what we've been trained to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is scary to go there. It's so scary to go mind body. We just want to fix. We just want to
we
fix.
we don't want to do any of this. Like we don't want to do any of this. And I say that all the time. I'm like, I love Nicole Sachs. Her work was so helpful to me in so many ways. And she often says this phrase, which I love so much, which is like, life's a choice between what hurts and what hurts worse. And for a really long time, I was basically choosing pain. Even though it was like 10 out of 10, literally all day, every day, my system could not wrap its head around like doing the rest of it, doing the actual like setting boundaries, taking care of myself, speaking up, using my voice. Like that felt literally impossible. And so my system was like, yeah, we're just gonna keep you in pain. Until I was like, oh, I actually do have to do this.
Yes.
And it's really scary the whole time.
Yeah, 100%. You didn't say the exact words, but you kind of mentioned there's a lot of beliefs around pelvic pain that make it really hard to heal, specifically because, well, I don't know, I'll ask you, but I'm assuming
Mhm.
so because there's a lot of talk around normal abnormalities and back pain and sciatica. Back pain is like the original mind body healing methodology, or not methodology, but symptom, if you will, right?
Yeah.
Why is pelvic pain so hard?
I think several reasons. I think one, first of all, like we just hear less stories about pelvic pain because people don't want
Yeah.
to talk about it. Like
Yeah.
I genuinely didn't think I would ever share my story. Literally ever. Like I promise you, like sometimes I sit here and I'm like, wow, I can't believe. Like I tell people all this every day. But I do it because people telling their stories was so helpful for me because I was not hearing very many stories, right? So that's one, is just feeling like you're kind of like alone in your
Mhm.
symptoms, like feeling like A, it may not be possible for you and your specific symptoms, and B, there's so much shame. Like we can't talk about it with like a friend or a family member in the same way we can back pain. Like back pain is literally dinner conversation, right? But people like don't want to talk about their vulvas or
Yeah.
their bladders or whatever else is happening, right? Like it feels so different from like a social emotional level, right? So that's
Yeah.
one thing. I think also, right, there is this aspect where once you learn, for example, take back pain, for example, once you learn that your back is like kind of safe and okay, it is safe to stop monitoring it for a new problem, right?
Mm.
With pelvic pain, like, first of all, you have to pee a couple times a day. So you do have to actually like sometimes tune in to that part of your body.
Mhm.
And you could get a new infection. Like that is actually possible.
Mm.
So there is this kind of piece of having to learn to tune into that part of the body and not go straight into panic, right? And so that can feel like really, really, really hard to do. There's no way to fully ignore it and just say you're okay, you're fine, I'm diverting my attention in the same way you can for some other symptoms. And what I still want to say is like it's still possible to heal. I think there's this big story around pelvic pain being like the hardest pain to heal from. And I just want to validate, like I felt that way. So many clients feel that way. And what I also want to say is like it feels the hardest for us who have it. And that's why our nervous system chose it, because it's so good at keeping us fixated, right? But people will also say that about their migraines or about their back pain. or about their foot pain, right? So we only ever have our own experience. And I just want to name like everyone's experience is valid. But what I don't want is for you to use that as a reason why you believe it's not possible for you to heal. People heal from chronic pelvic pain every day, and there's no reason why you can't do that too.
Yes. There's so, and I'm assuming too, there's just a lot of, like you said, people don't want to talk about it. So there's secrecy. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's so much meaning that goes around not only being a woman, but also, yeah, vulva, vagina, IC, bladder, like all of that down there for a long time. We've had messages, whether that is overt or underneath the surface, right? Of like private secrecy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we don't talk about that. That's vulnerable. So, in my mind, I mean, knowing my body work, yeah, your brain's going to send a bunch of danger signals to that part of your body because, yeah, it's been there.
And often, right? Like this is not always the case at all.
Yeah.
And I would say like 30 to 40% of the people that I see who have a pelvic pain symptom have a history of some kind of sexual trauma. And so there is a lot of fear and
Yeah.
story and a lot of worry about that part of the body and a lot of protectiveness, right? Which is so like logical, right? But there's this aspect of befriending that part of the body that can feel so hard to do when you've had that rupture. And it's not that that can't happen anywhere else, of course, but that is a pattern that does come up quite a bit. And there's this aspect of sensitivity, like emotionally and physically, that does need to be addressed.
Yeah. What would you say when people are just kind of connecting those dots of like, oh, I guess I have had this trauma in my past or these experiences? How does that actually contribute? How do I connect the dots there? What happens?
Yeah. So, to put it as simply as possible, like pain is protection, right? And so, if we have something that our body feels is unsafe, something unsafe happened to us, the brain can send out these danger signals to say, like, protect, like not like do not enter, but kind of do not enter, right? Like this part of the body is not safe. Alert, alert, attend, like don't keep going, don't pass go. And so it can just be helpful to understand that it's the nervous system's way of keeping you safe, of saying, of alerting you to something is wrong here. And like it needs your care and attention. It's not trying to harm you.
Pain feels like it's harming, but yeah, it's getting your attention. And guess what? It's going to speak really, really loudly.
And the way that in my own experience, right? So this, I can never tell anyone else this is how their pain is
Hmm.
working. But I really do feel like my pain, my pelvic pain specifically, was basically setting boundaries that I wasn't able to verbalize to myself. And that's not everyone's story, right? But I think it can be helpful once you make those connections to soften your relationship with those sensations. Because for so long, it can feel like your body has betrayed you, right? That was my experience. I was like convinced my body had just turned against me and was punishing me. That's such a common experience that other people tell me too, right? The feeling like the body has betrayed them. And the truth I've learned after my own experience and working with so many clients is the body is literally always on your side. The nervous system is literally always on your side. Your fates are intertwined, right? And so I think that reconceptualizing those symptoms and sensations, not as an enemy, but as communication and protection, is one of the most healing things that we can do for ourselves. And it allows a much softer and self-allied way forward.
Yeah. Yeah. That is, I don't have the similar experience with pelvic pain, but fatigue and shutdown and migraines and like my collapse is definitely a way to set boundaries for me. 100%. Like it will set it really hard when I didn't learn how to.
Totally. I remember reading Gabor Mate's book, When the Body Says No.
Oh
And
yeah.
I just remember that phrase. I read the title and I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And then I read the book and I was like, oh my God. And there were just so many pieces, right? Once you get kind of into this work, I mean, my way I want to say of healing, but I'm somebody who like really intellectualizes, which is part of my problem. But I'm an information gatherer, right? So I kind of read like everybody's stuff. I try to learn from everybody. And at the end of the day, everyone was kind of saying the same thing,
Yes.
right? Which is good. That's good news, right?
Yeah. Yes, it's good news and because it speaks everyone has a different way of saying it, so it speaks to different people. I was just
Exactly.
talking to another therapist about this, where he was like, "Oh, I loved, I think Alan Gordon's book is the best," and someone else was like, "Actually, I really love how Nicole Sachs speaks about it now." And we recognized, oh, well, she has a feminine perspective, this is a masculine perspective, and there's different wording, and it's great. We have so many
Totally.
resources.
I love it. Different flavors, right? And it's like, yeah, you're absolutely right. Like how someone says it will just speak to a different audience. Like everyone needs a voice that they resonate with, right? And I mean, I truly say like there could not be enough people in this space. Like there could not be enough voices in this space, even if we're all kind of saying the same thing. Great, great.
Yeah. 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 Okay. So, what are some other common struggles that people have had before, maybe in their life before maybe
Mm,
the pelvic pain has come on? What are some themes that you see?
yeah. So in general, some like personality traits, I would say perfectionism, people pleasing, goodism, like really like kind of high pressure living, I would say. And a theme that I've found with a lot of my clients and also was a big factor in my own experience is a lot of body image and eating disorder behavior. And so many of us have had the experience of kind of just hating our bodies our whole lives, right? And that is societal, that is cultural, that is soup we all swim in. And what it leads to is chronic self criticism and self neglect and really suppressing our like hunger, like the cues from our bodies. Like it's so funny because so I had to do my own eating disorder healing work as I was healing chronic pelvic pain. I started off, it's so funny, it's not that funny, but it's kind of funny. I started off trying to heal my chronic pelvic pain through diet, shocker. Because my belief, right, was like, oh, I'm just, chronically inflamed and that's the reason why, right? And so anti-inflammatory diet, I did like the crazy medical medium diet for like a couple of years. Like I really got into like eating disorder quote unquote heaven. But it was the worst thing I could have done because I became terrified of literally all food. Literally all food and all toxins and all like possible things that could ever, inflame me, which is like the world. And everything became unsafe. And I literally like didn't believe my cues for like hunger, right? And so if we learn to disconnect, I've been dieting since I was like, I don't know, 11. And so I learned very early to disconnect from the signals of my body and believe that the signals from my body were wrong, right? And so that patterning will lead us to chronic self-disconnection and disembodiment. And so what healing asks us to do is the opposite, right? Is to tune in, to reconnect, to embody. And that felt impossible and foreign as fuck because I had never done that. And so this took me a while. I am not ever going to sit here and be like, yeah, I just understood it and I was fine. No, this took me years, right? And so when clients come to me and they're like, I've been doing this for 3 months, why isn't it better? I have so much compassion and so much like patience for them. And I'm like, listen, some folks, it's really fast. For most people, it's not, right? And how can we allow the journey to take as long as it takes? And if you're healing eating disorders alongside chronic pain, like we have to have so much space for that and the journey that's happening on kind of both fronts, which do for sure overlap, right? But there is like different stories around each. And I mean, I remember when I was first realizing I had to do eating disorder recovery as part of my healing, I was like, well, I can't gain weight. Like for me to get around the idea that I could gain weight took me literally like a year. So everyone's at their own pace. You get there when you get there. But it was the way that I had to go to get where I am now, which is pain-free.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that that's really important to note the commonalities between, I've talked about this on this podcast multiple times, the commonalities between eating disorders, disordered eating, and chronic symptoms, but furthermore, specifically pelvic pain. I know I deal with or I work with a lot of people with IC and OAB, and that there's so much disordered eating there. How could there not? You're told a specific diet is contributing, certain foods are contributing directly to your symptoms.
That's one of my biggest soapbox like
Oh,
topics. The IC diet, I want to burn it. Like it has ruined so many people's like relationships with food and with themselves and with their bodies and beliefs around like what IC is and how it comes to be. Long story
yeah.
short, yes, I can only imagine if that's the population you're working with, like it's rampant. Rampant. And of course, I have IC patients too. They also had been doing a lot of all kinds of diets.
Yeah. Even honestly, I would say, I mean, I don't have exact statistics on this, but I would say a very large proportion, if not like all people that I work with who have chronic symptoms have had some sort of diet recommended to them and they've gone down that route and then it's become disordered and then they become fearful of food and then it makes the fear signals even worse. And but they'll sit there and be like, yeah, but I have inflammation in my body
Right.
and food contributes to that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
can you talk a little bit about that, especially when you're talking about your journey too and what you
Sure.
work with?
Yeah. So interesting. Yeah. So I for sure had that belief, right? This chronic inflammation is
Yeah.
causing my symptoms, right? And here's the truth, right? Like if I did blood work all the time and my ESR and CRP were elevated, I had inflammation in my body. That was true. But inflammation in your body, especially when it's chronic, is typically due to a chronically dysregulated, upregulated nervous system. It is your neuroimmune connection. You are inflamed, right? But that is probably not the cause of your pain, but it is a response to a nervous system that's under chronic threat. So you're just trying to like quell the inflammation without getting to like the root cause of the nervous system being the ultimate driver of that inflammation is
Mhm.
really not the direction to go. And the more afraid we are of food, the more we're afraid that what we're eating is inflammatory, the more our system will respond with an immune response. And so we're making all of these things literally worse by being afraid of them.
Exactly.
And that's how we see all these like new food sensitivities like emerging all the time, right? Especially with people who are like on elimination diets. And like now this thing, I can't eat it at all. I'm like, yeah, because your system believes it's threatening. It believes it's a problem. And so it's responding with support with your immune system.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I actually just recorded a whole episode on that. Food is not the enemy, I think I named it, because it comes up so much. And I actually don't hear a lot of people in our work talking about it.
I agree. I'm shocked about that actually. I talked about that with some of my colleagues. I'm like, why are people talking more about like disordered eating disorders in like mind body healing? It's so prevalent.
Maybe we should do something.
Coffee too.
Okay, I want to go back just a second around the common struggles that people
Yes.
deal with, not just maybe in their past, but and not just personality characteristics, but what about some of the belief systems, the emotional
Mm,
patterns that you see with people specifically around pelvic pain?
yeah. So just a lot of shame, I would say.
Yeah.
People who are brought up to believe that like that part of their body is dirty, that part of their body is only for their husbands, that like if they have pelvic pain, like they're being like cursed. Like there's a lot of I would
Mhm.
say like religious trauma, honestly, that comes up quite a
Yeah.
bit. And really just beliefs that like they are bad because they have pelvic pain. Like they're doing something morally wrong. And I think that just because of like the story we have around like genitals being this like really private part, right? Private area of the body. And folks often just have this belief. And I think that's something that we work to really unlearn is that fear and that shame, truly.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I can only imagine when you grow up not talking about it at all, right? That's like not okay to talk about your genitals or understand what's happening down there or how you should feel about it or not feel about it. And then yes, 100%, I can totally see as growing up in a religious household myself, how those things can overlap and the shame, so much shame that comes with what do you do or not do with that part of your body. There's a lot of rules and regulations around it.
Yeah. And that's challenging, right? Because if folks are still in that religion, right? Honestly, I'm not necessarily the best person to work with them because I'm not religious. And so my view is so unshaming that sometimes like they don't quite know. Right. And I'm so happy to like work with them if they want to, but I'm always like, just so you know, my lens is not religious. So just FYI.
Yeah, I've actually learned it's kind of a newer area I'm getting into of understanding how to kind of like open that and be with it with folks who are coming, whether they're in it or not in it, but understanding how to approach it with the religious lens, with getting out of that kind of community, or again, if you're still in it, figuring that out. Yeah.
Do you know Hillary McBride?
Yes.
She
Yeah.
wrote Wisdom of the Body. I am obsessed with
Yes.
her.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and she just came out with a book called Holy Hurt, which is basically about that. So just going to recommend, because I'm currently reading it and I think she's incredible. And I'm not religious. I haven't like come from a religious background, but it comes up all the time because many people did, right?
Yeah.
When you're working with people, it's like good to know, right? What that can really do to your brain and nervous system,
Yeah.
especially as it relates to chronic symptoms.
Yeah. Okay, something that just came up for me that I want to name, that when we're talking about what you've learned, what you haven't learned, your belief systems, you can still be in a religious standpoint, you can still have beliefs around how to treat or give your body. It's more about releasing the shame from it and the beliefs and the criticism around it that I think we build up over time, right?
It's your own relationship to that part of the body. That's what you're looking to shift and change. It has nothing about what you do with that part of the body with anybody else. It is how you feel towards that part of the body and the relationship you have with that part of the body. That is all that has to happen to heal chronic symptoms.
Yeah, exactly. Hi, little kitty.
Oh,
If you're listening and not watching, her cat just came into the screen.
Willow came to join us.
All right, another question. What is one myth about pelvic pain that you'd love to see disappear forever? Or two myths, I don't know, multiple.
One myth about pelvic pain I'd like to disappear in like the mind body space or in general.
Let's do both.
Okay.
If you have both.
Okay. So in general, I think the belief that pelvic pain is shameful.
Yeah.
I think that's something that like people really believe and they believe it so deeply. And I think that like if we remove the stigma, people can get help so much faster and feel so much alone, so much less alone, so much faster. I think that's like life-changing for people.
Mm-hmm.
From a like practical perspective, I think it's important to know that even if you have like a quote unquote structural diagnosis, whether it is like pelvic floor dysfunction or IC or neuralgia or vaginismus or endometriosis, that does not mean that symptoms cannot be vastly improved or even eliminated. I think that's just like a thing. People get really attached to labels, especially with pelvic pain. And I just want to be really clear on that you have to have sex in order to heal. That's what I hear all the time. And I think it is like, this is never blaming the person who believes this, but it is like a self-coercive statement for folks who like do not want to have sex, right? And people have been told that from like parents, from practitioners, like just have sex, it'll go away. Like it's crazy. But that drives me absolutely insane and it makes me so mad.
Yeah. Yeah. Meaning like you'll be better if you're good with sex. Like
Yeah.
that's the test. That's like the try and true test you're healed.
No, not even that. Like you actually have to have penetrative intercourse in order to heal your symptoms. And it's not even a goal of the client. So often it's crazy.
Okay. This is the first time I'm like grasping that or understanding that it's something to heal. It's like a tool.
Correct. Just
Why?
have sex. Patriarchy? I don't know.
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
like I don't know, but it's been like passed down from parents, from providers, or like, you know, have a glass of wine and just like have sex and you'll be fine. Like literally, right?
Y'all, my jaw is literally dropped right.
So you haven't heard that one before. I'm happy for you. Sorry to bring it up. But I hear that actually quite frequently and it makes me like irate.
Yeah. I was thinking like, because I've heard like, oh, well, I'll know when I don't have pain with sex that I'm better in a way. Right. But
so if that's a goal, like
sure.
Great. But for a lot of people, it's not even a goal. They're like, I want to sit. I want to pee without freaking out. Like, you know? And listen, if you want to have sex, we can totally help you have sex. But like that does not have to be a goal just because you have pelvic.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Good to know.
Just to clarify.
Okay. When we talk about pelvic pain and specifically pelvic floor dysfunction, can you demystify why that is not a cause for pain? Because I hear that a lot. Well, but my pelvic floor therapist says I have a really tight pelvic floor. So like, you know, I would have pain.
Sure. Yeah. So first of all, we probably do have a tight pelvic floor, right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing, right? So I am a pelvic PT as well. I have treated patients in the clinic and people have pain with tight pelvic floors, without tight pelvic floors. They have tight pelvic floors and they don't have pain. Like pelvic floor tension does not necessarily even correlate with pain. And if it does, it's not necessarily causative. And usually the pelvic floor hypertonicity or dysfunction activation is again due to a chronically upregulated nervous system stuck in protective mode. So that is like the culprit. And so something I often kind of frame it with clients is like, they've been to pelvic PT traditionally, right? Where PTs are trying to like get the pelvic floor to relax by like pressing on it and trying to stretch it and like manually release it, whatever that means. But basically it just kind of comes right back up, right? Because ultimately the way I think about it is like your system is guarding, right? Your muscles are in a guarding response, right? And so how do you get a guard to relax? You don't like press on them and say, stop guarding, right? Like you have to change the orders of the guard. And
Mhm.
that's the nervous system, right?
Yeah.
And here's the thing. I actually don't really care if you're hypertonic or not. If it's not impacting your ability to have like penetrative intercourse that you want to be having, like I just don't think it's usually like that big of a deal functionally unless you have a big functional problem. If it's just pain that you're experiencing, you can have a hypertonic pelvic floor. It's okay. Like it's okay.
Yeah. I don't know if it's just because the world I'm in now and, you get feed based on what you've searched and things like that, but it seems like pelvic floor therapy is kind of having a moment right now. And there's a lot of talk about it, especially new moms after giving birth. And when I hear a lot of people talk about it and like, oh, I need pelvic floor therapy or I'm going now, or I start to be like, I don't know about that.
So I'm happy to talk about that because I actually think
Yeah.
there is totally a place for it. But the way that I think about it, right? Like, so first of all, delivering a baby, right? A lot happens during pregnancy, during delivery from like a structural perspective, right? And sometimes folks want to be in like a place that they feel safe to get back to function, to
Mhm.
get back to movement, to feel like their body is okay. And if you're working with a practitioner, if it's a pelvic PT, cool, that helps you feel safe to move, safe, because people are often afraid of their bodies. They're like, what is this weird feeling? This hurts. Is this normal? Like, usually after a 6-week follow up with an OB, they're just like, left out in the trenches. And so having a space that they go to that they feel like somebody they can trust is supporting them, I think that's not a problem. I think that's actually a good thing, right? Where I think we run into issues is when we're told they have to fix like all of these different things when their body is just simply healing and recovering from a normal process.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Okay. Yeah, the fix it. There's something wrong with you.
Yes.
That's the problem.
Yes. That's the problem. But that's a lot of marketing, right? Like
Mhm.
that's, and like, listen, I wish it weren't. I wish that wasn't how it was framed. And I think there is a way to make it more like this is just supporting you in your own recovery that your body is already doing. If you want a place to do that here, happy to help. And that's not often how it's marketed. And I just want to like name that that's not great.
Yeah. Yeah. What about outside of after giving birth?
Mm-hmm.
Women, actually, maybe you could speak to hypermobility, hypermobile women, but in general, women who have been having some pain, some sensations, some issues, maybe, and they're told pelvic floor therapy could help and that it's tight.
Yeah. So it's kind of the same thing as I said before. It's like that's not the problem. And listen, like, right, if you're hypermobile, you probably do have like more holding of the muscles because the perception is I'm unstable. Are you unstable? I don't know. But your nervous system perceives it to be unstable, right? And so you're going to have increased tension to stabilize the body. This is like the from PT school 101. The body will always choose stability over mobility, right? And so if the fear is like I'm too mobile, it'll try to stabilize you. And a way to do that is to contract muscles. Not inherently a problem.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Thank you for speaking to all of these things that we hear all the time of like, well, this is tight, or well, this is inflamed, or well, this I've seen this on tests, I've seen this, right? Like it's just over and over. We have to keep speaking to the normal abnormalities of the body.
Yes. And that's what I got stumped on that for a while, which is why I had to like deep dive
Yeah.
understand these things
Yeah.
because like I couldn't accept that without understanding. Like I couldn't really go down the mind body road because I was like, no, my body's not okay. But it's like, no, 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 this is just another normal abnormality. It's fine. Yeah.
By the way, if you have not heard it yet, we say normal abnormalities because that is actually something that Dr. John Sarno termed when technically he's not the original founder of all this work. Mind body symptoms have been happening as long as we're human.
Yes. In the Western medical system. Use
Yeah,
the
in the
OJ.
Western medical system, a normal abnormality is literally what it's called. Like, we have our we have abnormalities in our bodies that are totally normal because we're human. We're not perfect. So, yeah,
And they're not inherently a problem just because you see them on imaging or you see them on your body.
exactly. Yeah. All right. So, as we've talked about so many different ideas, theory, or not even theories, but like reasons behind someone might have pelvic pain, along with all the labels that they may receive. Is there anything else that you feel like is important to note as we've talked about the subject? Something you really need people to know?
One thing I'll just say is it doesn't matter how long you've had symptoms for, you can still heal. Folks will always, not always, they'll often tell me, like, well, it's been, 5 years. I can't heal now. It's been 10 years. I can heal now. Your nervous system can rewire anytime. This is like, you are neuroplastic forever until you die. And so I just want to offer that's true. I think I also want to say, specifically to pelvic pain and those diagnoses, there isn't one label that is incurable. It is a diagnosis of exclusion. I'm again taking endo and adeno in a separate category for now. And so critically important to say, right? We are never, ever, ever saying that symptoms are all in your head. That's like my number one thing I always have to disclaim whenever I talk about neuroplastic symptoms, because there's already so much medical gaslighting, especially with women, especially with pelvic pain. And there is always this fear of like, you're telling me the same thing that asshole doctor said, which is like, my pain isn't real, right? And I'm never ever saying that your pain is so, so, so real. And if it's driven by the nervous system, continuing to do structural physical treatments is not going to help you heal. And so we're just opening avenues of support, avenues and new directions to actually get long-term relief and resolution. And just to be open-minded if that's something you haven't yet explored.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I'm going to add a little something to that, actually, because I have recently been reading Nicole Sack's new book, the Mind Your Body book. And she'll be like, you're going to do this work. And then you're going to, your brain's going to tell you, like, oh, I should go get this test because what if it's actually this? It's a distraction because you don't, the emotional work, the nervous system work is harder than anything usually you'll do. So your brain's going to keep sharing that, like, oh, you need this test, or you need that test, or you need this, or blah, 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 blah. Needs treatment, right? That's normal. Just keep coming back.
Yeah. Here.
Cool. All right, Rachel. Thank you so much for being here. I know this will be a really powerful episode for so many of us. Yeah, happy to have you.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.